live from the District of Columbia. You are listening to the Black Fundraisers Podcast, a weekly podcast that celebrates, inspires, and equips Black fundraisers to excel and positively impact Black communities. With your host, Kia Kroom.
Good day, good people. I'm back like I never left. It's your girl, Kia Kroom, fundraising and fund development pro, and the host of the 100 Black Fundraisers Strat Talks, your weekly podcast that celebrates, inspires, and equips Black fundraisers to positively impact Black communities. Let me be the first to thank you for taking the time to find me and hitting that old play button, and know that it's my hope you'll continue to hang out with me here. And if you're back like you never left too, thanks for rocking out with me one more again. I truly appreciate it. Y'all, I gotta tell you, I've been very dismayed and downright angry about the events going down in Georgia, particularly surrounding SB 202. Now, keep in mind, I was a Georgia Peach for about 10 years. That's right. I graduated from the Clark Atlanta University and started my nonprofit career there. That is the genesis of all of my hard work, right, to this end. You know, I started my career there and attended graduate school there at Kennesaw State University. And during this time, I want to make it very clear, you could feel the old guard in control in Georgia. Please do not be fooled. While we got a lot of good music out of Georgia during the time that I stayed there, and this is between 1999 and 2009. Georgia turned out a lot of good snap music, fun dances, but what wasn't discussed so much was the very dark politics that were happening in the state and some of the policies that really do a number on communities of color. That's a whole nother conversation. But I can truly say that while I lived there and had my peach, Georgia truly lived up to its ultra-conservative reputation and had a Republican-controlled legislator to boot. With that contextual background and having, lived in the state during that time, I was particularly encouraged and impressed to see the historic election results that we saw as of late with the presidential race and the historic runoff in Georgia. In fact, I'll never forget, on January the 6th, I got up, turned my TV on, and I was ecstatic to learn that Georgia had elected its first Jewish senator with John Ossoff and its first Black senator with Pastor Raphael Warnock. I had a whole praise break. I got my shout on in my dining room, and I was just overcome with joy. And I remember within moments, this monumental historic victory that Georgia pulled off being totally sullied by the Capitol insurrection. Suddenly, instead of discussing this seminal victory and the hope and promise that it symbolized, media outlets were covering the roguish thuggery perpetrated by the Capitol rioters. And I was watching, you were watching, America was watching this deadly riot take place and vandalizing property and leaving unscathed without any impunity. I was literally nauseous watching this atrocity unfold before the world's eyes. And I felt like literally the world was watching white supremacy and terrorism close in on and even destroy our nation's capital. So imagine the outrage that I felt, that I shared with people across the country who watched just 2 months later, just a few short weeks ago, folks, when Georgia Representative Park Cannon was arrested for peacefully knocking on the door at the Georgia Capitol while Governor Brian Kemp covertly and cunningly signed into law the egregious SB 202 bill, categorically disenfranchising millions of Black and brown voters across the state of Georgia. Representative Cannon was doing her job and seeking accountability. She was holding her lawmaker accountable, which is what she was elected to do. She posed no danger. She caused no harm to anyone. Yet she was arrested and charged with 2 felonies. After watching Representative Park's arrest, my first recourse was to connect with the sisters and brothers that I know personally in Georgia to check on them, hear their reactions, and to connect with voter mobilization groups across the state and to learn what could be done to protect the Black and brown vote in Georgia. Because let's be clear, Black and brown voter disenfranchisement in Georgia affects us all. And in the words of Dr. King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied by a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. So today, y'all, Fenika Miller, the Georgia State Coordinator of Black Voters Matter, is stopping by the Black Fundraisers podcast to discuss just what they're doing to protect and defend the Black and brown vote, not only in Georgia, but other places like Texas and other states throughout the South. And she's going to dish on SB 202 and what it means for Georgia voters and organizations working to fight the suppressionist tactics we've seen play out as of late. Let's get into it. Hello, Fenika. Welcome to the Black Fundraisers podcast. We're happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Kia. Thank you for having us.
All the way from good old Georgia.
That's right, the Georgia Peaches. That's right.
That's right. Now, you might not know this, Fenika, but I was a Georgia Peach for about 10 years now.
Where'd you live?
I lived in Atlanta. I lived in the Vinings area. I lived in the Swats.
Okay.
Southwest Atlanta. I'm a proud alum of the Clark Atlanta University. I remember how Georgia looked and felt. Mm-hmm. And it looks differently now, thanks to good people like you.
Absolutely. We are so proud of what Georgia looks like and how representative Georgia is now of the people's voices, right? Not only diversity with our newest senators and Congress people, but also diversity of thought.
Yes.
That speaks volumes to the hard work for folks who are on the ground, organizers and activists who have done work for well over 10 years to kind of massage the vote and to engage communities around what accountability to community look like. So, yeah.
That is very important, Fenika, and I'm with you. And let me take this moment to thank you for all of the hard work that you did, because had it not been for brave, courageous, outgoing, determined women like you, I don't know that we'd be here.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, sis. It is my predecessor, Wanda Mosley, who's now the National Field Director. It's women like Latasha Brown. It is organizers like Melanie Calhoun and Tiffany Hart and Kiana, who are working hard across the state. And it's the more high-profile people like Leader Stacey Abrams, who have dug in and done hard work as well. So definitely a team of folks making things happen. A team of Black women. We make
Yes, it takes a village, and we are not scared.
Absolutely.
We are never scared. And I love that fearlessness about us. I love how we, and I'm speaking about Black women, about sisters, we put our bodies on the line, our voices on the line. We'll put it all on the line in the name of community, in the name of what's right. And I have deep appreciation for you and for Black Voters Matter. So I would like for you to tell the good people listening about Black Voters Matters, your platform and your territories, because you all are making headway in a lot of Southern communities.
We're a power building organization, our official name is Black Voters Matter Capacity Building Institute. We support local infrastructure on the ground in rural communities. The brainchild of Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright, who are our co-founders. I mean, I get to sit and glean and learn from some of the baddest organizers in the whole country, y'all. And to work alongside of colleagues in an organization that is 100% blackity black. So we get to show up as our authentic selves every single day, y'all, to make a difference in communities. But Latasha and Cliff had the idea to create an organization that supported local infrastructure, that trusts the voices of the folks in communities who are doing the work to make a difference. And that is what they did. Several years ago, when Doug Jones was running for senator, they dug in, they raised about $200,000 in a matter of weeks and gave all that money out to folks who were on the ground, you know, grandmamas and aunties and uncles who were knocking on doors and making phone calls and trying to get folks out to go vote down in rural Alabama to make a difference in their state. And they did that. They sent Doug Jones to the Senate and have been building in full steam ahead ever since. The principles that we live by, again, is to support local infrastructure. The folks who are doing work in communities know what their communities need. We need to trust and invest in them and build their capacity to do that work better.
I agree with you. Trust the folks that lead. Trust the fact that we know our communities like nobody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Trust what we have to say, what we know, and our process, and invest in it, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you said blackity black. I'm not going to skip over that blackity black. I like that. Blackity black. And it's nothing more affirming than being able to show up in your job, in your role as your authentic self. So I think that that's beautiful. And that's a great, enviable place to be. And I'm happy to know that you enjoy that experience, that inclusion in your organization.
Listen, when I landed in this role, I was a partner of Black Voters Matter. So I came to this work as an organizer and an activist with over 2.5 decades of experience already. And when I met with Cliff in a church in Macon, Georgia, they were just coming off of that Alabama campaign. And I was listening because I used to carry this Black Votes Matter sign in my car. My organization centered Black women and girls, teaching them how policy affects their lives and getting folks out to vote. And when I heard the pitch and the appeal, I was like, okay, I have landed in my happy place, right? So I came on as a partner. I was one of those organizations that Black Voters Matter invested in to build our capacity to get folks, to mobilize folks to the polls for 2 years. Before I was asked to even join the team, I just joined the team as an organizer in August of last year. And it was transformative, one, to come from the partner position, being one of those people, that local infrastructure that they invested in, and then move into a role to really help other local organizers on the ground to do their work better. So bringing both of those perspectives. And now in this new role as state coordinator, I'm glad that they've entrusted me as a person who was a partner to come in and to help other partners and other organizers to sling those votes everywhere, to educate our community, to build power, to get our folks to show up, and to really hold those who are at decision-making tables accountable for what they owe our community for having put them there. So this is the best place. It's a happy place.
That is a beautiful thing. Tell the good people listening about Black Voters Matter, the mission and the work.
Yeah, so again, we support local infrastructure. We lean into the culture fully. So not just blackity black, we capitalize the letter B, right? We trust and support Black women. That is also a part of our core principle. Authentic messaging, right? We don't sugarcoat with our folks, and we don't tap dance around the race issue. We tell it to them plain, right? We put it where the goats can get it, like Joe Madison says all the time. So it's local infrastructure. It is organizing in rural communities that Black voters matter everywhere, that Black voters matter 365 days a year. And like I said, leaning into the culture, celebrating who we are as a community, right? And how we build. In Georgia now, we are in 10 states, just expanded into Texas a few short weeks ago. Yep, and in Georgia, we have a 75 county footprint and over 130 partners that we are in community space and that we are building with across this state. And so we replicated that model across all of the states and primarily in rural communities.
It's really incredible. And I got to tell you, I became familiar with the work of Black Voters Matter last spring because I have a really good friend, a powerhouse out in Dougherty County, Georgia, in Albany, Georgia. And she got engaged with you all, and she was helping with voter registration events, just providing support to organizations that were just really reaching into the Black community, primarily Black Voters Matter down there. And she kept me in the loop of just how raw and how real in the field it was. Like, I don't know if the good people listening know, but it was real. It was raw. It was flagrant. The voter suppression efforts, I was made aware of instances, I don't know what you can share or you can't, but I was made aware of instances where there was a person who brought a firearm, a white woman who brought a firearm to a polling place in Dougherty County, Georgia, brandished her firearm and left the polling place unscathed, right? There were all kinds of atrocities happening. Talk to the good people listening about what you saw and your colleagues saw and experienced leading up to the presidential election recently and even the Senate runoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely Albany, what we say, our good friends down in DOCO. Shout out to our organizers and Sawega Rising down there, our friends Omni and Sherelle, who are doing great work. It's very real out here in these streets. First of all, America has to do some reckoning around Black folks, right? That they are just not ready to do about the harm that has been inflicted upon Black and brown and marginalized communities, but especially Black folks. And so when you get into communities and when you start doing the things that Black Voters Matter along with our partners are doing, where we're building power and building Black political power at that and being unapologetic with it, that bothers some folks, right? So yeah, there were instances in Albany when our partners were engaging in line warming, and which is another provision, one of those blatantly racist provisions in Senate Bill 202, where you criminalize giving folks a bottle of water at a polling location who are waiting in long lines that their policies created. Things like that happened in Albany. One of our partners was arrested in Coffee County. We had instances all across the state where it was just brazen. Folks were intimidated by our shirt. Black Voters Matter. It's not a candidate on this shirt. It is just affirming that Black voters matter, not just Black votes, right? Intimidated by our mask. They don't want you to wear that. They tried to make that seem like it's a political statement. No, this is a power building, affirming message for Black folks in our communities. Absolutely. So yeah, there were definitely times where, our baby buses, we had a fleet of baby buses wrapped that said Black Voters Matter. And the two words on those buses are love and power. So it is an affirmation, but folks get intimidated around those things and, they try to stop us, but they can't. And that's just it.
That's right. It's a movement.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going back.
No.
You're not going back. It was important to hear how real it is. And I saw my good friend spend most of her summer. She devoted her summer to community organizing. And this is a Black woman, a professional, a mother. She's so many things, as many of us are in our communities. And she devoted her time and talent and treasure to that effort. It would keep me in the loop of what she saw, each and every experience she had. So I thought it's important to give people that context. Let's talk about this SB 202. What does it mean? What's in it?
There were over 24 bills proposed and introduced in the state legislature in Georgia. When Black folks showed up in November of 2020, and then showed up in even greater numbers in January of 2021, we already knew that there was going to be a pushback. Because again, it's something about Black folks minding their business and doing things quietly, but when you show up saying that Black voters matter, and when you've leaned into the culture and you're passing out literature and you're having folks walking around masks and things like that on, it's intimidating. Folks do not like that. So we knew there was going to be a blowback. Anytime that Black folks are building power, there's always going to be a white pushback, period. But there's something about when Black folks are building power, there's a white blowback, right? And we've seen that time and time again across history. So Senate Bill 202 is that white blowback. It is white men whose fathers and their daddies, their granddaddies, and their great-granddaddies have never had to fight for the right to vote, right? Attacking folks who've always had to fight to exercise our democratic franchise in this country at the ballot box, right? I mean, they threw everything against the wall that they could. One of the most talked about provisions in that bill is the line warming, but that's not even the most egregious. That's just like the cherry on top that they put in. So it makes it a misdemeanor for folks to pass out food and water to folks waiting in long lines. It gives everything that the previous occupant of the White House said that he wanted to do when he called down to Brad Raffensperger's office and asked him to find 11,700 votes. They have put in this bill and found themselves a way to find 11,700 votes, to take the power out of the folks who are voting and put that power in the hands of a GOP-controlled legislature to overturn an election or results that they don't like. Unlimited challenges to voters, right? You can say, I don't think that this person should have the right to vote, and you can challenge that voter. Closing polling locations early, restricting the number of ballot boxes that people can have. I live in Houston County. We have over 150,000 people here, but you can only have one ballot box per 100,000 people, right? Taking control out of the hands of local boards of elections offices, putting it in the hands of a GOP-controlled legislature. And what folks don't understand is this is not just, it is in blowback to what happened in 2020.
Absolutely.
The line warming provision is a direct attack on Black Voters Matter, especially when you lift up the case in Albany where our folks got a gun pulled on them, right? But this is even bigger than that. Brian Kemp, the current governor, we know in 2018, oversaw his own election as Secretary of State. Now that Black folks have wielded their power, we've sent the first Black senator to the United States Congress, right, since Reconstruction. And we've sent a Jewish senator. They know that the handwriting is on the wall when it comes to these statewide races, these constitutional offices, governor, lieutenant governor, Secretary of State, Secretary of Education, Labor Commissioner. The handwriting is on the wall. Black folks gonna vote. We will not be deterred. But what this gives them the right to do is to overturn the results that they don't like. So essentially, it puts it back in the hands of a Brian Kemp and his colleagues and his cronies in the legislature to overturn those elections.
Yeah, and that's a really grim picture.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at what's happening, the more the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's real out here, and this affects everybody. What do you say to the person who believes, you know what, that's happening in Georgia? I don't really have a dog in that fight.
No, everybody has a dog in this fight. And that is why we launched the Corporate Accountability Campaign, to say everybody has a dog in this fight. These corporations, major corporations across the country, signed a pledge last year during the summer of protests. And what they said is, we don't like what happened to George Floyd or Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. And we pledge to stand on the side of Black folks, affirming that Black lives matter and that we're going to stand for racial justice. They signed that pledge. So what we decided to do is say, hey, we need you to make good on that, because this is a direct attack on Black folks and on Black voters, right? So stand with us to stop these bills. Use your influence to call Governor Kemp and to call these representatives that are your friends that you donate to, and tell them that this is not what you want in Georgia, that democracy is good for business, right? And voter suppression is not. So, and to engage everybody everywhere. Right now, there are over 361 bills in state houses, 47 state houses across the country. And just as Georgia was at the epicenter of the entire country during the general election last year, we find ourselves now in the same place again. We found ourselves there. We didn't get to celebrate just, much on January the 5th, an insurrection, right? A week after that, we went right into a legislative session in Georgia where 27 voter suppression bills were passed or presented, and then 80-page omnibus bill. They were all lumped into. So this is intentional. It's a direct attack, and we need all hands on deck. We are really literally at ground zero right now, and we're asking the nation to stand with us. Corporate accountability, divest. Do not support candidates who have supported voter suppression. Pull out your money. Don't donate to them. Use your influence to stop these bills from passing in other states across the country. They don't have to go through the same thing that or fight the same battle that we are. Use your influence to help us repeal Senate Bill 202 immediately. They can repeal any law that they want to. And also use your influence to help us get our federal lawmakers to pass H.R. 1 and H.R. 4.
Talk to us about H.R. 1 and H.R. 4 a little bit.
Yeah. So that is the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. And that is those are the only pieces of legislation that are going to give us some protection here in the state of Georgia. We know back in 2012 or 8, I believe it was, when Shelby versus Holder was passed, which stripped the provisions that protected the South, and particularly southern states, from passing these voter suppression bills and things of that nature. So we need to re-implement and institute those laws in order to give us some protection.
Was the corporate accountability reception pretty positive? Can you give some idea of, what kind of support that has received from the corporate community?
When our partners first kicked it off, remember, we support local infrastructure. We had a statewide partner call, and our partners were very upset, and rightfully so, and wanted to know, what are we going to do, right? Well, what do you all want to do? And they said, we want to do X, we want to do Y, we want to Z. Well, let's do Y and Z. X may not work right now. So they kicked it off. Corporate accountability was launched from there. Our partners over in Hancock County, Sparta, Georgia, which is 71% Black, held a boycott at their county commission meeting to have the voter suppressor in chief. His name is Barry Fleming. He authored House Bill 531. They had him fired as their county attorney, right? That lit a flame across the state with our other partners. So we're doing direct actions, protests in front of Home Depot, UPS, Southern Company, Delta, the Georgia and the Metro Chambers of Commerce, AFLAC, and Arthur Blank's Foundation, the Home Depot, because those are the major corporations here in Georgia. And it lit a fire. We were able to build a solid coalition. Our coalition partners, New Georgia Project, NAACP, Fair Fight, and the Atlanta Labor Council have all joined forces. We were not able to stop Senate Bill 202, right, here in Georgia. Corporations came out after the fact. We're proud that they are now standing a lot stronger. They did not come out as strong as we needed them to come out, But, now we're seeing them move more to the forefront of the issue. And that is where we're saying we need to stop these bills in other states. We saw last week 77 Black CEOs who came out and signed a letter and saying that this bill was wrong. Then we saw Delta make a more firm statement. We saw Coca-Cola. As a matter of fact, I always give our girls at Clark Atlanta, as a matter of fact, students at Clark Atlanta University came down to our very first weekend of action at World of Coke and led protests out there in front of that. And we can give those young girls a big pat on the back. We were not calling for a boycott, but boycott Coke was trending. We're appreciative that folks are leaning into corporations to say, hey, Black folks in the state of Georgia spend $106 billion with you. And we need you to stand on the side of your consumers, right? Not the folks that you're donating to who will strip away your tax credits at the last minute of sine die just to give you a pat on the hand because you're standing with Georgia voters and with consumers.
We saw that with Delta. That's what you're getting at. Tell the good people listening what happened to Delta and that they missed it.
Yes. So Delta has been a target on our corporate accountability campaign. We were protesting. Delta came out and made a firmer statement. And then as soon as they made that statement, Republicans in the Georgia House voted to strip away their fuel tax credits, right? Delta employs over 30,000 people in the state of Georgia. It's one of our largest employers, if not the largest employer. And because Delta stood on the side of Georgia voters, and we're clear when we say we believe this is an attack on Black folks and Black voters. We don't unequivocally, we say that. But these laws will affect all Georgians, right? And our messaging has been consistent with that. We need our allies and all Georgians to stand with us in this fight. And when Delta did that, the Republicans in the legislature, in the House, voted to strip them of their tax credits.
Incredible. It's feeling nasty, long, and brutish. Mm-hmm. What's happening there?
Yes.
It really does.
Yes. And so Delta, these folks are not your friends, right? You're donating to their campaigns and supporting them and wooing them. And, it's a very nuanced conversation that we have to have. But you have to stand on the side of the folks that support you. Consumers buy your products, right? Consumers make sure that you can fly the friendly skies, right? We need their support and their influence. All of these corporations, we need them to stand on our side and to stand with us and to help us fight back against these egregious attacks on voting rights.
I would like to know, what was your reaction to Representative Park's arrest?
We were at Delta protesting. We had been to the Capitol, our partners on the ground. So a small contingent of us stayed at Delta, and then a few others. When we got word that Senate Bill 202 had passed the House, it was in the Senate, we thought that it would be, at least a day or two before it got to the governor's desk to be signed. But no, they were going to sign that bill the very same night, within 30 to 45 minutes after they passed it, under cover of darkness. They did it with 6 white men in a closed room under a painting of a slave plantation. Didn't allow any other representatives to be in there. And for Representative Cannon to simply knock on the door to say, let me witness this as well, right? You don't have anything to hide, let us in. But this is just another way of us seeing, of them showing what they're really about, right? They're not about protecting voting rights. This is not about election security. This is about power, right? And how 7 white men can keep millions of Black and brown and marginalized folks from accessing their power at the ballot box to elect the representatives who speak for the people, who have the people's best interests at heart. But instead, you bought into the big lie that there was some kind of fraud. Then you proposed all these bills under cover of darkness, no transparency, and signed it with 7 white men behind closed doors, and arrested a Black woman, Black women who built this country, who've led movements, in support, who are always the most marginalized and underrepresented, right? You arrested her under false pretenses. or simply wanting to witness you inflicting harm on millions of Georgians across the country. I don't have anything else to say about that. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And it shows us, my grandparents used to say, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them, right? And we need to believe them. The proof is in the pudding. It's in black and white, now codified into Georgia law, named Senate Bill 202.
That's right. And I've been seeing the memes, Jim Crow 2.0, and I'm feeling like, okay, it's 4.0, it's on 100. Because let me tell you something. Yeah. I know that watching what happened to Representative Cannon probably gripped you. It sounds like it gripped you the way that it gripped me here in my home. And I was moved to tears, sobbing tears. And my 16-year-old son, who looks more like a grown man, right? When he's walking down the street, society doesn't look at him as the young teenage boy he is. They see him as a threat. Had to console me because when I saw Representative Cannon being arrested, I saw Selma cross this line here, right? Don't go another step. Don't go further. Do not pass go.
I'm gonna put you in your place.
I saw her being arrested. And let me be clear for the good people listening. I wasn't there. I happened to watch on the news as it was trending, Representative Cannon's arrest. And yeah, I saw Selma, Bloody Sunday, right? People might say, oh, that's a lot. No, but that's what it looked like to me, an assault, right? That was an assault. Let's be clear and call it what it is. I saw you don't belong here. And I was reminded even, I don't know if you caught All In, Stacey Abrams, the documentary. Titled All In. I encourage you to take a look at it if you haven't. She talks about how she graduated at the top of her class from high school, and as a reward to, you know, the highest achieving students, valedictorians, and she might have said salutatorians, there's a trip, they get to make a trip to go visit the governor and mingle with the governor. And she talked about how her parents, she and her parents got on the bus and went to this celebration and were met by a state trooper who forbid them from going any further and told them, you don't belong here. So when I saw this arrest go down, the tears that I cried were because of that familiar feeling that you don't belong here. Get back. Yep. And it hurts.
It is. It stings, right? It is a familiar thing that Black women have to go through, that we need to stay in our places, that we don't deserve to be in leadership positions, right? It's one of the reasons that we see all of the health disparities among Black women, right? That we can see candidates talking points around Black maternal health care when we've been facing these conditions all along. It's one of the reasons that Black women can still make less than white women and white men, 61 cents on the dollar, right? Pay us what you owe us. It's one of the reasons that we are, Black, we're just marginalized and underrepresented. Not that we don't have power, but the data shows that. And this is just another slap in our face that we need to stay in our places. Right? It was very hurtful for her to have to go through that, for her to be facing 8 felony charges or 8 years, in jail, when the folks who stormed the Capitol got helped down the Capitol steps, right? They still can't figure out how to identify, right? How they all walked out of there alive after killing police officers. You see what I'm saying? And then for this state trooper to then turn around and say that he felt like another insurrection was going to happen when there were only 5 women in addition to Representative Cannon.
Yeah, and another reaction, another reason that I reacted the way that I did was this whole concept of bystander intervention. And I digress for a minute because we're seeing the bystanders. If you've had the emotional fortitude to watch some of the Derek Chauvin, I'm not going to call it the George Floyd trial because George Floyd is not on trial. The Derek Chauvin trial, right? And you have these bystanders and people that try to help, that were calling the police on the police, or as my mama would say, the police, right? Yep. Calling the police on the police, and struggling with how to support someone in distress, someone who's being victimized. Seeing that arrest go down, my heart went out to the 3 sisters that accompanied her, that were holding space for her and wanting to support her. And I just remember being so grateful that, you know, they held it. And because that could have escalated and went the other way and caused even more harm. And in no way do I wish to take away from the harm that was done to them and their psyches witnessing that. And let's be clear, we've heard of Freddie Gray, right? I didn't forget, and I know you haven't, and other people haven't. We've heard of situations in which, you know, harm was inflicted and done to folks, you know, and nobody's got an explanation of what happened or how that person, you know, why didn't Freddie Gray survive that transport, right? Just having this happen and having to have those fears and concerns for her welfare. I understand that she was taken on an elevator. We're concerned about this individual's safety. So this, let's be clear, this was an assault, and it was incredibly difficult to watch. And I, like you and many people across the country, are holding space for Representative Cannon, who was doing her job. Felt the people in her district, her constituents, elected her to do her job. And she was arrested, knocking while black, right?
Knocking while black, drinking while black, walking while black, knocking while black, voting while black, passing out water while black, right? I agree with you 100%. When I saw them put her in the elevator, just like you, sis, I was like, ooh, anything could have happened to her in that elevator. And it would have been their story, their word against hers, right? If they can come out and say that they actually were afraid that there was going to be an insurrection at this 5'1" small frame black woman with 5 other women standing by, they could have said or done anything to that sister, right? That's the dig, that black folks can be minding their business, that we can be on the front lines, that we can be giving voice to every other group and bringing our voices and our needs to the table. And anything can happen to us, right? We can be killed. We can be witnesses to murder, like those who witnessed George Floyd's murder. We can be jogging, right? We can be voting, and voter suppression bills can be passed. This country has shown us time and time again what they feel about Black folks, how they feel about us. But in this moment, I never want to abdicate the power that we have as individuals and turn it over to them, right? Because we've seen it before. We've seen it time and time again, how we build. Like we've seen, I keep my granddad's voter registration card hanging on my wall. He was one of only a few hundred Black men in Houston County to be registered to vote in 1962. When they said count bubbles or count, marbles, we bought soap and we trained our folks, how to recognize and count bubbles on soap so you can exercise your franchise. Let's go read this Constitution and memorize it front and back. Black folks, we invented knowledge. You cannot stop us. We will rise to the top time and time again, despite the obstacles and the hurdles that you put in front of us. So I don't want us to abdicate that. We're going to protect Black women. We're going to stand. Part will be exonerated. Those charges will be dropped. But this all ties back to the power grab that they promote, that they sign into law to take away voting rights for millions of folks across this state. It's all one and the same. It's a power grab, but they will not win. They will not win.
That's right. We're up. They got the right ones for it, don't they?
They got the right one.
You've been seeing them memes. Mess around and find out.
You can put that on Mary Had a Little Lamb.
What can we do to support you? And when I say we, listeners, people across the country, what would you say to folks in terms of how they can support Black Voters Matter?
So several ways. One, you can always donate to us. The majority of the resources that we get in, aside from operating, we put those back into the hands of community members, our trusted partners on the ground. That is how we support them to build their capacity. So you can donate. You can connect with folks who are doing good work in your community, or you can, begin leading efforts in your communities, right? It doesn't have to be a formalized organization. If you need a phone bank, a text bank, we can help with that. So those resources are good. The other thing is just reaching out to your elected officials in Congress and asking them, urging them to pass H.R. 1 and H.R. 4, right? And if that means get rid of that filibuster, that's what we need to do, right? Because Georgia voters and Georgia Black voters sent those Congress people to Congress, and you got stemming now. You got expansion of healthcare and COVID vaccine, shots in arms and money in the pocket. Is that what they said, right? So we do have the power. So reaching out to them to ask them to deliver on the promise that they made. Then also helping us in our corporate accountability campaign so that we can block these bills from passing in other states, and supporting our brothers and sisters that are doing work on the ground.
I want to support and encourage you all. And I want to encourage the people listening, because this was a little bit of a heavier listen, but it's a necessary listen because this is real. But one thing that I know about our people and our community, the Black community, is that we're resilient, we're determined, we're going to keep at it, we're going to keep fighting. And telling stories like this, sharing these accounts and lifting up this message until people get it. I'm committed to doing that. I'm not going to stop. And I know that you all aren't going to stop. So I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate you sending positive vibes from the DC area. And I want to say to the good people listening, you've heard what Fenika had to say. You learn how you can support Black Voters Matter monetarily, their corporate ability campaign, make calls to your representatives, your people that you have elected and put into power, or you're a constituent in their district. You can make your voice heard. It takes a village. What's happening in Georgia is happening to all of us. It affects all of us. It affects the Black vote, the brown vote, the yellow vote, BIPOC. You got a dog in this fight, good people listening, and we are in it, and we got to fight our way out of it. So for the good people listening, I want you to be encouraged. Stay tuned, stay down, and keep your head up.
Thanks for listening to the Black Fundraisers Podcast. Like what you're hearing? Subscribe to the Black Fundraisers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and leave a 5-star review. Connect with Kia on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter to stay connected.
Hello, thanks so much for stopping by. I am Kia Kroon, and I'm a fundraising professional and DEI champion. I am in pursuit of racial justice for people of color and communities of color. I'd love to explore ways we can work together to change the world.